This is Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. In season Birds 365 because Eagles get it underway today. If you like Mark Farzetta filling in for John McMahon, hit the like button. If you like Rob Maaddi, the lead NFL writer for the Associated Press, hit the like button. And if you're not completely annoyed with me, hit the like button. Thank you very much. We could use your help on the algorithm. We get help whenever we punch Rob Maaddi up, looking good down there in Florida, getting ready for an upcoming NFL season. Maaddi, I want to start national before we get back to the Eagles. Saquon Barkley last night signed a one-year deal with the Giants. They had this Zoom meeting of all the running backs last week, which apparently they came up with no answers, and I can't blame them because I couldn't come up with the one either to get running backs more fairly treated. But Saquon signed off pretty quickly for only $900,000 worth of potential incentives. Did he do the, I can't win this fight, so I might as well get what I can get, or did he dodge a fight that needed to be fought if the running backs are going to be treated more fairly in the league?
It was surprising that he would end that holdout so quickly, not even holdout, right? He reports on time for an extra, what potentially could be $900,000 in incentives. As angry as he appeared to be a couple of weeks ago, and as angry as a lot, like Jody and Mark, I talked to a lot of these running backs who, and we know they put together a campaign on social media. Some of the things they said off social media, some of the things they said to me were even, they were mad. They were so angry, so frustrated, to the point where I thought it was concerning because a couple guys were talking about players at other positions and the money they made. One guy specifically brought up Odell Beckham Jr. How's he get $18 million when he's been hurt? How did J.J. Watt, how did Julio Jones always make their money when they've always been hurt, yet we as running backs? And when I sensed that, when I saw, now this wasn't Saquon who said that, by the way, but when some of these other running backs in that group are that angry and they're talking about other players at other positions making their money and how could they get it, to me, it suggests that there's a bigger issue, a bigger resentment. And how's that play out in the locker room when you're supposed to be all in for the team? Like if you got that running back group sitting there thinking, hey, look at that diva receiver and all the money he's making, and he's missing a game here and he's missing a game there. Meanwhile, I'm getting the heck beat out of me, carrying the ball, blocking, catching passes out of the backfield. That doesn't bode well. And there's always been a saying in sports, you don't talk about another man's money. And I saw that coming out. So when they're having those conversations with me, I'm wondering who else are they having those conversations with? And at some point, will that kind of fester? Will that kind of leak out because there's that much resentment? That said, Saquon did the team thing. He wants to be in. He feels like the Giants are going to be a contending football team. I think otherwise with Daniel Jones at quarterback, he's got a legitimate beef that he's making a quarter, a fraction of what Daniel Jones is making. I don't value him in the top 10 or top 15 as quarterbacks. So I understand where Saquon's coming from. I thought he'd hold out for 2 or 3 weeks and then sign the franchise tender and show up. But I think this to me speaks a little bit to his character. Showing up early, wanting to be that guy, wanting to be the team player, and maybe that gets him paid down the road. I doubt it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It sounded like for a while that the running backs were almost going to break off and form their own union when it came to how much they've been taking advantage of. And I'm sure this is a huge blow to them with Saquon signing as early as he did. And as you pointed out, Rob, showing up to camp on time. Something else I want to ask you about, though, is what you were talking about there, the quarterback position there. When you talk about guys like Lamar Jackson, you talk about guys like Justin Herbert, these guys all signed their contracts, and Joe Burrow is going to be doing a huge paycheck as well. But did the Eagles possibly, at the quarterback position here, get the best quarterback of the new group, signing new deals at the best price? From a national perspective, do you think that's a fair assessment?
I like Jalen better right now than Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert. That's for sure. Yeah. And if there was a quarterback or two that I'd put ahead of him, it would be Patrick Mahomes, who is grossly underpaid, I guess, in relation to some of the other guys right now, and Joe Burrow. And I say that because Joe's been to a Super Bowl just like Jalen. Jalen's got a little bit more of a dual threat. I'm I'm very confident that Jalen Hurts can get better as a quarterback. And I think that Joe Burrow is surrounded with a lot of talent to where he can continue to improve. But the Eagles he's right there, guys. I think as far as it's hard to look at any quarterback making $50 million and say you got value, though. I mean, you're paying a guy $50 million a year. That's not a team-friendly value type deal. That's a whole heck of a lot of money. And it's time. These guys got to go out there and earn it. And I think the only way is to hoist the Vince Lombardi trophy to where you say you got your money's worth. Being competitive, being in there, winning 12, 13 games and getting to NFC. We know in Philadelphia that doesn't cut it. Donovan McNabb went through that, right? For 4 years in a row. So you got to hoist that Lombardi.
All right. I do want to take it back to the Birds with you, Rob, since it is Birds 365. Nick Sirianni going to be talking to the media about right now, as a matter of fact. What's his message coming into the season? What card do you think he's going to play? Motivational tool, player focus. How is he going to grab the attention of his players? First chance, first time they step on the field as preseason, add some OTAs, which are activities at most, not actual practices. What do you think Sirianni does to get this team headed in the right direction, defending an NFC championship, which isn't going to be easy since they've now got a target on their back for everybody who's on their schedule this year? How does Sirianni play it motivational-wise going into the year?
Well, we know Nick does things a little different. Remember the flower analogy that had everybody in Philadelphia, including some people, wanting him fired, and all he did was turn things around and go on an incredible streak since that. I think this one's kind of easy. I think Nick plays the confetti video. I think he shows the confetti raining down from Kansas City, celebrating. And how did that feel for the guys who were, because there's some turnover and there's some obviously new guys who didn't experience that, but for those guys in that locker room who saw that confetti fall and they had to run off the field while the Chiefs were celebrating, I think he plays a little bit of that. I believe he's gonna emphasize, hey, you learned from last year. You're not the same team as last year. You got to, as Jalen has said to me, you got to build your own identity, but don't forget the hurt, the pain, how that felt. The anger, the frustration of being that close and losing, and whatever it takes to go there and be on the other side, to have that silver and midnight green confetti falling from the sky. That's what they got to do.
Rob, when you look at this team going into training camp right now, I'm just curious to get your perspective on this. We have a lot of adulation. We have a lot of respect and appreciation for what the offense could do. Defense, I think, has a lot of question marks here. Is there a position group in particular that you're looking at, thinking Howie's lurking somewhere, Howie Roseman's lurking somewhere to improve upon a position core similar to the way he did, or a position group similar to the way he did with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CD Deuce right before the season last year? Is there something that Howie you think is trying to sniff around the league to see if he can maybe upgrade a certain position group in the not-too-distant future?
And even Ronald Darby back in the Super Bowl championship year, too. That happened right there in training camp when they traded Jordan Matthews in August. Maybe the linebacker position, guys, maybe you look to upgrade there. Maybe you see who's who's still remaining out there, or somehow I think they're set at a lot of other positions. You never can have too many defensive backs. If somebody can become available, whether it's a corner, whether it's a nickel, whether it's a safety, I think that's kind of an area where Howie has always looked to improve. But when you look on the offensive side, I think they're set everywhere. Couldn't they upgrade potentially at slot receiver? Maybe. I'm not sure that there's someone out there right now that would be an upgrade, and how they might go around that. But we know how he's never finished. He's never done. He's always looking to improve the roster. Nothing surprises me if he makes a move in September, like a couple days ahead when they trade Sam Bradford in 2016. That was 9 days before the start of the regular season. And so there's always a possibility that Howie will do something. But right now, you look at this team, as much depth as they have, as good as they were last year, and I know they had some losses. I know they got 2 new coordinators. I still believe the Eagles are going to be right there in the mix at the end of the season in the Final Four.
Rob, I got to ask about this because I know how much it crazed me in years gone by, and it's going to craze you even more because you're the lead writer for the Associated Press in the NFL, and it's going to be more difficult than ever before. Cut down day in the NFL. They used to cut as they went along, and the number came down to get to 53. Now they're letting teams keep the entire 90-man roster until that one cut down to 53. I thought it was crazy to try and figure all the guys who were getting cut and who's got an issue and who fills a hole here. It's just so many names on a piece of paper. How the hell do you get through it? And that was with cuts as they went. Now it's going to be one big happy group that's going to be unbelievably large. How's that going to play? I thought, well, yeah, no, maybe teams, no, guys not going to make, they'll do the right thing. They'll cut them early. No, they're not, because they don't want to, they want to be able to be in the best position to negotiate and bring a guy back to the practice squad, because the practice squad is that big. If they like a guy, they're going to want to try and get him back on the practice squad. How nuts is that that day going to be around the league?
It's going to be wild for the agate guys and everybody who's got to compile all those transactions and newspapers and everything else. But you're right in that, Jody. I don't think you're going to sit there and start doing a goodwill, good faith. Hey, you know what? I'm going to release this guy 2 weeks early so he can go out there and get another job. Why? So he can go and get another job within the division and beat you at some point. If you have the opportunity to hold on to guys until that last minute, you're going to hold on to them. And then you'll have a wild scramble. I think this isn't going to be great news for some of these players who are on the periphery, for teams who are looking for that opportunity. All right, if you're released in the first wave, you're released in the second wave, you can hook on, you can catch on, you can get in somewhere. Now you're not going to get that chance to get in and work with a playbook and get familiar with a different team and have that. You're going to have to do it through into the season and the practice squad route and all that stuff. It's going to be very interesting to see. It's going to be a hectic couple of days. I'm not sure how it's going to play out this first go round.
Mm-hmm. Rob, I got to ask you first. I want to mention just seeing some tweets out here. Nick Sirianni addressing the media. Cam Jurgens is getting the reps at right guard with the first team. And I know that's been a discussion. Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens. Cam Jurgens is getting the reps with the number one guys today, at least at right guard. And then the running back room as of right now will be a rotation, which I don't think really surprises that many people. Rob, Jody and I were talking earlier about the coordinators and how rare it seems to be that you have a new defensive coordinator and a new offensive coordinator. Not only do you have a new offensive coordinator, but right away, Brian Johnson is going to be calling plays. I'm curious, when you look at the coordinator position now with Desai taking over for Gannon and Johnson taking over for Steichen, how does this all work in the upcoming season? Are we going to see a carbon copy of what we saw from Jonathan Gannon or with some tweaks? And is Brian Johnson going to be able to jump in and take the bull by the horns when it comes to play calling with the offense?
I think the transition's a little more smooth with the offensive coordinator spot. Obviously, we know Brian Johnson's been in the building. He's been a quarterback's coach. He's known Jalen since he was 4 years old. And it's not like they had to go outside and bring in a new offensive coordinator. It's not a new system. It's not anything. There's going to be tweaks. He's going to put a little bit of his statement, his mark on it. But of course, there's that familiarity. And ultimately, it's Nick Sirianni's offense, right? It goes through Nick. He's an offensive-minded head coach. And if something were to go wrong at some point, he may take control and start calling the plays. But I've always liked Brian Johnson since the day one when the Eagles brought him in from Florida. I remember hearing him do a presentation at the NFL Quarterback Summit. I was like, this guy's going to be a head coach. Forget offensive coordinator. I think he can leapfrog from quarterback coach to head coach. Well, guess what? I was wrong. He's an offensive coordinator. He didn't leapfrog from quarterback's coach to head coach, but doesn't mean this isn't a one-year pit stop for him either. He could make that transition if they do well this season. I think with on the defensive side with Desai and Gannon being gone, it's a little bit different. He's coming in from the outside. He's got a little bit different of a philosophies and schemes and how he's going to utilize some guys. But they've got so much depth, especially on that defensive line, that you're still got to build your defense through getting after the quarterback, since the strength of this team is to make guys in the middle. They got the run stuffers on the edges. They got the guys they can go after the QBs. And I think that's where it starts. And he would be wise to build his defense on those strengths. And I would anticipate he does that. Will he be more aggressive than Jonathan Gannon seemingly was in the eyes of Eagles fans? Perhaps. He may not face that critic. I think he might even get more of a honeymoon period because he's not Jonathan Gannon. And a lot of the frustration that fans had with him, despite the success he had. And I know what he said since he's gone out to Arizona and some of the things that weren't necessarily reporters wanted me fired. I've never heard that before, but I think they'll be okay. It might be a little bumpy early, guys. I caution fans. You might not jump out to a 7-0 start. You might not be 8-0. You might be 5-3. You might be 6-2. It might take a little bit of time, a little bit of adjusting. Teams are coming after you. They're coming into your building. They know you got the NFC Championship banner, and they're trying to bring you down. So it might get a little bit bumpy in the beginning, but it's how healthy you can be at the end. And let's not forget, last year they were a very healthy football team. They started all 22 starters were healthy for the Super Bowl. I can't anticipate that happening. That's a tremendous amount of luck. No matter how they handle all of their offseason and how they go light here, and that's great. At some point, somebody's just going to get nicked up, and that depth has got to show up, and that's where it's big for them.
Now, the Eagles aren't going to be happy with you, Rob Maaddi. You used the L word. They don't ever like to talk about luck. There's no luck involved that they were one of the most injury-free teams in the National Football League. How dare you say that?
Can I say fortunate instead? They were fortunate.
Yeah, better than luck. I think they'd accept that. Good on you. Here's what I'll tell you the Eagles were a little lucky with. But again, not all luck, just a little bit. This has been a drama-free offseason for the Eagles. They got the Jalen Hurts thing done early, and it benefited other teams by getting it done and setting a bar. And the Ravens should send up a bunch of crab cakes for them. And there's umpteen things they can find out there in L.A. for them to ship to the Eagles as a thank you note. No Jalen Carter speeding tickets, no major issues with any of their players. Been a drama-free zone for the Eagles in the offseason. How does that play when camp opens up? And the one thing I'm really questioning is the whole gambling thing. 10 different players been fined and or suspended, some indefinitely, for gambling across the NFL. Eagles not being one of them. There are other teams in the same boat, but the Eagles avoided that. NFL in general, people are critical. They didn't get the message out. The players didn't understand. You're tied into players. You got direct access to players. Sounds like a good relationship. You can get them on your phone. Did the NFL handle this right? Is this on them, or is this on the players who just said, yeah, I can sneak a bet in? They knew the rules, but thought they could get away with it. Didn't know there were geo trackers on phones that were going to get them caught. How big a deal is the gambling aspect in the NFL?
Jody, this is an issue where I've gone back and forth on it. When it first started, like it's a couple guys, I thought that the fault lies with the players. I was on the side of, hey, this is sports. You should know better. It's plastered all over in the locker room. Don't be stupid. Don't take a chance. And then as I start talking to more players, and then beyond that, some coaches. I'm not sure if you heard Sean Payton the other day. Maybe I think it might have been yesterday.
Yep.
And he had a very damning criticism of the NFL, ripped up their policy, had someone else bring in, had their own internal guy say, hey, it's this, compared it to the gun policy, if you can't have a gun. And when you hear guys who are in coaching positions take that approach, I wonder if the message didn't get through the way it should have. Now, you and I believe we've probably discussed this before. I've said it before. For me, the only way is no betting, period. Don't say you can't bet on football, but you can bet on basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever you want to bet on, giraffes at the zoo. You can't, just for that 3-year period you're in the NFL, or 1.5 for some guys, or for 14 years, whatever it is. It's always been no betting, don't bet. Now it makes it easier. I know the sports books aren't going to like it, but that would make it easier. But for now, it's get that message across. No betting on football, no betting on anywhere where you can't bring, as Sean Payton said, a gun to the facility. You can't bet from there. But guys you can't be dumb. You got a $5 parlay or a $10, how much more what are you looking to do? its default lies with both. And ultimately, the NFL they look hypocritical because forever they didn't want sports betting, they didn't want it legalized, and now all of a sudden, like at this point, and it's going to happen, I believe, this week. We're going to see in casinos there are going to be games that feature NFL. They feature NFL teams, like. So it's to that point. Beyond the sports betting, you're going to have, I don't know what the games are. I got to run through my texts and my emails, and the publicists are trying to share this information with me, but they're like, we're breaking this week. It's going to be, and there's going to be like teams affiliated logos and whatnot on games within casinos. Like, to me, that's just a bad look.
Well, I had not heard that. So that would be very interesting.
Sometimes you got to break a little bit news. You got to break a little bit of news on First 365. Now I got to go through and see if I gave that information out too soon. I probably did. Probably until Thursday or whatever it is. I'm going to get a bunch of emails, but hey, I didn't get too specific.
Wow. So like this slot machine presented by the Philadelphia Eagles or Philadelphia Eagles slot machine.
I got to read through it, but I think it's like their logos are within there or something like that. Now, of course, I'm looking for it. I got to go through my inbox and it's whatever. But
wow, just plug Madden into a TV and have people bet on the computer simulation. That's interesting. That's really wild. And I get where the NFL is coming from as far as the gaming goes and how it actually could potentially affect what actually goes on the field. And what I always go back to, Rob, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but tell me what you think. The replacement refs was a direct impact on the integrity of the game and the integrity of the outcome. If you got players that are rolling dice anywhere on any games and throwing down money on any game in any sport, it can bleed into football and it could bleed into that player doing something that immediately impacts the game. So when I look at the NFL's policy on all this, I get it. I know other people talk about things in the grand scheme of life that are worse than gambling. But to the NFL, the only thing that matters is the NFL and the game. And gambling could bleed its way into affecting how games are, the outcome of games.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest issue is protecting the integrity of the sport. And if people start to, how often have we heard guys, oh, that game was fixed, and this is years ago when gambling wasn't. Now, when something happens that looks extraordinary, when something happens, if you were going to be an angry bettor or an angry fan with no money in the game, but just it's your team and they got jobbed and you're going, it was fixed. It's not completely unrealistic like it used to be 5, 10, 15 years ago, even though we know there's been some other issues. And the league has to do whatever it can to protect the integrity of the sport. And that's why I go to, well, if you're accepting all this money from all of these different various sports betting companies, and that's going to be the way it is, and you're going to see the logos and the commercials and whatever, that's great. You can encourage all the fans in the world to bet. Maybe just not that. What's that? 53 times 32, 1,600 people in the NFL. Maybe I think the sports books would be just fine if 1,600 folks were prohibited, plus coaches. Make it 2,000. Make it 2,500 people. Whatever it is. If those 2,500 people could not bet on auto racing or anything else whatsoever, basketball, football, hockey, anything, I think they'd be just fine. Just make it simple. No betting, period. That's not going to fly, but that's Rob Maaddi's solution.
Of course, you're right, Rob. But the way that the sports books are going to look at it, it's not just 16. It's 1,600 people that make a whole lot of money. And if they bet, they're going to bet big. And those are the kind of people we like logging in.
Charles Barkley's are in the NFL, right?
Exactly, yeah. All right, Maaddi, man, I'm asking this question on July 25th, and you got the right to change your mind next week, the week after, all the way up till the first week of the season. Right now, NFC, rank the top 5 teams for me in order and tell me where how the drop-offs between 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. How do you see the NFC 6 weeks before they actually get underway with week number
All
one?
right. Well, I think right now, and this is not how it's going to be at the end, obviously, and it's not even how I predicted to be at the end, but going into training camp today on July 26th or 25th or whatever day we're at, number one is the Philadelphia Eagles. As our old buddy Ric Flair used to say, to be the man, you got to beat the man. So who's going to give me a woo? They're number one. They go in and I go San Francisco, especially now with the news that Brock Purdy is no restrictions. He's going into he's going into camp as the starting quarterback. I thought it might be a little bit later into training camp or into the season. You go San Francisco, number two. I don't think there's a significant drop-off from 1 to 2. I think that could be determined by home field advantage. And those are the top two. I go number 3. I like the Dallas Cowboys better than a lot of people in the NFL. I look at Dak Prescott and the picks he threw last year, and I think that's a fixable thing. I love the addition of Brandon Cooks on that offense and Stephon Gilmore in the secondary and some of the things they've been able to do. I'll put the Cowboys third, and I'll have them close enough to where it's like a 1 or 2 game from 1 to 3. Now, as we drop off into 4 and 5, I don't like anybody coming out of the South. The NFC North, I know the Lions are like the darlings. I might go Lions. I might go Lions at 4 right now going into camp, and the Seahawks are right there at 4-5 or either way, Lions, Seahawks, Lions. I don't know that Seattle's going to take a bigger, like Geno. When you look at Jalen Hurts, I think he's going to get better. When you look at Geno Smith, that might have been the best you'll see him be was last year. And Seattle might drop off a little bit. I think the Rams are they're certainly going to be improved. They're going to shake things up a little bit in the NFC West. The Packers will take a step back. I think the Giants are going to take a step back. I think the Commanders are in complete rebuild mode, and the Packers, obviously, without Aaron Rodgers, they're not even last year with him. They weren't a playoff team. The Bears might get a little bit better, but it's kind of wide open. The South, whoever wins it is probably going to be a one and doneer, and they might have another sub 500 team. Might be the Saints at 9-8 or at 8-9, and I think the Panthers have a shot. And I love Frank Reich as a head coach with Bryce Young coming in there and getting full reps since OTAs. I think they got a shot to be right there in that mix in a division that's wide open. But for me, it's Eagles, 49ers, Cowboys, then a little bit of a drop to the Lions, Seahawks, or Seahawks, Lions.
Fair enough. Bigger drop between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3? If the Eagles are 1, are the 49ers closer to the Eagles or are the Cowboys closer to the 49ers?
I say the Niners are closer to the Eagles.
Yeah, I see it the same way. I think Eagles and Niners have distanced themselves from everybody else. I'm on that Seattle bandwagon. I know it's Geno Smith, but they got a lot of weapons for Geno to work with out there in Seattle.
They do.
I think Cowboys are a little overrated to start the season. Maaddi, man, we always love it when you come on. You know we're going to get you up before the season gets underway. We're going to hold your feet a little bit more to the fire in the predictions I just asked you to make. But we'll give you the entire preseason to get acclimated and evaluated on the players as they get ready for the season. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for jumping in today.
Great to see you guys. Have a great one.
See you, Rob.
You can find him on the Associated Press. He is their lead NFL writer, Rob Maaddi, Philly guy, now doing it nationally, but still respecting his Philly roots because his buddy Jody Mack asked him to come on, and he usually says, yes, here on Birds 365. All right, Mark Farzetta doing a great job filling in for Johnny Mack today. The Mac man down talking to Nick Sirianni as we speak. Farzy found a couple of quotes on Twitter from Nick Sirianni. We'll come back, take a quick look at those, and put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.